things, but sometimes it's good to hear some more ideas more than once, so it really gets in our heads. I'm really grateful for you, Maren, for bringing up reality and shifting our perspective on hope, because I often don't feel hope either. It's a word that's thrown around a lot. Colloquially, I think it kind of gets this live, love, laugh connotation. Not that there's anything wrong with living, loving, or laughing, but I'm not quite sure that gets at the heart of what I think hope is or what hope means to me. For me, it's not a good feeling or a sentimental notion. It's, as my favorite author and YouTuber, John Green, theologian for the internet, says, it's a prerequisite for my survival. And perhaps part of the problem is the English language. Hope having this live, love, laugh connotation. In Spanish, for example, I don't know if any of you speak Spanish, the word hope is esperanza, which is from the verb esperar, which means to wait. And it's not waiting for something good, it's just waiting. It could be good or bad, but it's a little different than some of the connotations that we have culturally around the word hope. So for me, again, hope isn't a feeling, it's a practice. It's a way of being that's rooted in the conviction that all of life is beautiful and worth cherishing, defending, and celebrating. And in the Manitoba office, we've come to think about hope as the practice of hope as having 3 ingredients. So the first is that hope is not oblivious to the pain of the world. It offers us a way to tell the truth about the reality of the world, both the unimaginable suffering that we see and experience, and its incredible beauty. Like many other Rocha people, I really like birds, and a few days ago I finally remembered to fill up the bird feeders outside my dining room window, and the birds started to arrive. Predictably, the resident gang of house sparrows was the first to arrive, but then a downy woodpecker discovered the suet. Amazing. Hope reminds me that I don't have to choose between my joy and my sorrow for the world. One doesn't cancel out the other. It's precisely because I love and find joy in the birds that my heart breaks when I learn that prairie birds are declining faster than birds in other habitats. Despite this heartbreak, I find that the world is still beautiful. It's still worthy of my care and attention. And loving the world means being willing to let it break your heart. And it opens the door to new ways of living that challenge business as usual. We contain multitudes, wonder and confusion, joy and sorrow, peace and struggle, life and death. And when we embrace this complexity, we become more whole and more able to care for the world around us. Our sorrow demonstrates that we are full of love. Our joy is resistance to the death-dealing powers that want to keep us overwhelmed and unable to take action. So our enchantment, our wonder, our hope with the world defies the relentless cycle of bad news. And this brings me to ingredient number 2, which is that hope requires an understanding of the story that we're part of. As Christians, we're part of the story of God's people. Our tradition tells us stories of an exodus from a military superpower and the resurrection of life from death. By execution. It tells us of a God who creates, redeems, and restores. So these stories and promises help to ground my hope in God's character and give me imagination for what life could be possible. The German theologian Zoe, who wrote around the time of the nuclear bomb, says that hope is life's response to life's call. And she writes about all of the people in our past and our history who have fought for all the big changes that we see, like civil rights and the end to slavery. And she says all of these big positive changes in history happened because many people collaborated across time and space. They collaborated in prayer, faith, anger, desperation, and disgust, but not hopelessness. Which brings me to the third ingredient, requires a willingness to take action with a posture of holding the future with open hands. Stephen Boomer Prediger says that optimism is the unwarranted audacity of belief that allows us to think that we need to do nothing to bring about the future. And despair works similarly. Whether you're confident that everything is spiraling into chaos or convinced that things will turn out okay, there's no strong urge to take action. The reality is, we don't know what the future will hold. We don't know when or how exactly God will bring about God's promise of restoration. But hope, as Rebecca Solnit puts it, locates itself in the premises that we don't know what will happen, and that in the spaciousness of uncertainty is room to act. And I think the Hebrew prophets knew something about this. The prophet Jeremiah had this advice for the people of Israel as they were waiting for God's promised peace to arrive when they were living in exile. They were ready to give up all hope. But Jeremiah 29:5-7 says, "Build houses and live in them, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray to the Lord on its behalf. For in its welfare, you will find your welfare." So, in other words, don't give up hope. Keep being faithful. I also thought about David Orr, and I'll just repeat that one phrase of his. Hope is a verb with its shirt sleeves rolled up. If we embody hope as a practice, rooted in the conviction that this life is beautiful and worth cherishing, defending, and celebrating, then it becomes realized when we work together to make that life possible for all people